Everybody, welcome back to the Beyond the Peloton podcast. I'm Spencer Martin, author of the Beyond the Peloton newsletter. As always, I'm here with Andrew Vontz from the Choose the Hard Way podcast, to betterlab.io. Andrew is joining me. This might be, second time ever in the history of the podcast in the Western time zone. This is a big deal for us. It's not 4:30 in the morning when I'm doing this show. But Andrew's just traveled, advanced man for the Beyond the Peloton 2025 Tucson retreat. He's our man on the ground. Andrew, before you plug anything, how is it going? What's the weather like? Where are you?
I am at a top secret location. I can tell you that I'm warmer than I was when I was in Maine. And I'm lucky to have a functioning computer right now. As you know, from some of the drama we went through today, I need your support now, listeners, now more than ever during this time of computer crisis. So I'm excited to be here with you today in this space, Spencer, and hoping that this computer holds up to deliver this content to the people who need it the most.
We can only hope. It looks like you're in some sort of back room, guest room. May I take a gander?
Yeah, I'm actually in a spaceship. I'm traveling through space and time right now.
We are convening in Arizona on Monday. I'm arriving. It's supposed to be like this. I don't know, this Denver weatherman. I don't know if he can be trusted. He's always like, it says it's going to be colder than the forecast is. I don't know if he's like works for Big Cold or Big Coat or something and wants to freak you out. But it's supposed to be -15 when I go to the airport on Monday. I think like in those conditions, if your car breaks down, you die. So I think it's worth it. It's worth taking the risk. But I'm a little concerned about how that's going to work logistically. But I am excited to see you on Monday. Get some rides in. Do you want to plug anything before we get going?
Yeah, I do. You know, when I'm on the road, I think I realize more than ever how important my rest and recovery routine is, because I do want to feel great when I get to Tucson and we do these rides. If you're somebody who cares about that, and I know you are, please go download the Better Lab. We're free in the Apple App Store for now. We help you build rest and recovery routine that's science-backed, that will help you feel at your best for the things you love the most, like, you know, riding your bike. I'm going to go, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw out 2 tips. They're not in the Better Lab app yet. I'm hoping to get them in there in the future. I picked one of these up from Christopher Blevins when I had him on Choose the Hard Way, which, by the way, is coming back. We've got new episodes coming. I've got some big news, got a newsletter dropping this week. Thing Blevins mentioned to me, and I'd heard this from a few other pro athletes, don't know why I hadn't thought about it before. Bring your own pillow. You know, if you're checking a bag, bring your own pillow. How many times have you gone to an Airbnb or wherever you're staying and you are on a piece of memory foam that's stiff as a board and it's like 8 inches tall and you can't sleep? Maybe somebody out there's got that kind of neck. They like having a very acute angle in their neck when they sleep. I've got a very special technique. I've got a pillow that suits that purpose. I bring the pillow with me. My other flex, I always use a white noise machine. I find it helps me sleep better in an environment now where there's quite a different sound profile than back in Hope, Maine, where it's pin drop quiet every night. Sometimes I'll use a white noise generator on my computer or phone, but the thing I like the most is my Dome white noise machine, mechanical machine. So I actually brought it with me on this trip. If I'm underweight in the bag, it's going in the bag. I'm bringing the sound machine. I'm bringing the pillow, and that's part of my rest and recovery routine so that I can feel good during the day.
When I travel with the kids, we always bring white noise machines because they have them at home, and I always think, oh, it's going to be great. And then it's like I end up not getting one because if they have both of them, then I'm like using my phone. It's not the same.
It's not the same. Like it's a little tinier. It doesn't. That mechanical noise is what we're all really after.
Yeah, my daughter, I had one just for myself. My daughter stole it when she was born. Maybe I need to replace that before the trip comes up. Before we get into this, we have to talk about plane bloat. Time on plane bloat. This is something I don't fully understand it. So, you know, I'm lucky enough. I'm a man with status on certain airlines. I show up. It's a trap to board early. They call you on to board early. You sit there for 90 minutes. It's like, what is going on? Get the people on the plane. What is happening? And it's just like the longest boarding process you can imagine. I've started to just get on. I'm like last person on the plane. The only problem is, if you don't want to check a bag, where are you going to put your bag? That overhead bin, it's taken. However, on the new 737 MAX, the door might blow off. That's a problem, but they have these new bins where everyone can fit their bag. So,
yeah. The 737 MAX does have a nice layout. The seats are all right. It also had that special feature for a while where it wouldn't stay in the air.
Yeah. And just like 2 incidents where a bunch of people died and they lied about it. But yeah, it's all fine now.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's all fixed. That was something. I was pretty excited when those planes came online. Every time I got on one, I was like, "Oh, this is so slick." And I don't know how I feel when you get back on them now. I will say, we've talked about this before. When I moved to California in the mid to late 90s, depending on how you want to characterize it, Southwest had bought a ton of fuel futures, so they could have incredibly cheap prices, and I could fly direct or nonstop between Burbank and Kansas City for like $100. I feel like my dad talking about how Coca-Cola used to be a nickel. But even at that time, a round trip for like $150 was quite a value in 1997. Since then, interesting things have happened with Southwest. If I want to fly anywhere on Southwest now, I'm taking 2 to 3 flights, and it's like I'm traveling to the Middle East. I will say, though, I used to really have a lot of anxiety and not enjoy their boarding process. And I know they are shifting to giving assigned seats. They do get people on a plane awfully fast, I have to say, relative to every other airline I've flown.
Because the panic. Everyone's like, I gotta get on there and get my seat. Yeah. Maybe they have something.
Yeah. Is there going to be someone in a tank top next to me? Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point. Yeah, there is a briskness to Southwest boarding that we lack on every other airline.
Sense of urgency.
Fascinating. I never thought about that. I also think Southwest, they used to have really low, we're in the weeds. They used to have low prices, but they locked everyone into that ecosystem. Like they had this whole legion of fans. Their prices weren't available on Google Flights. Their flights weren't even on Google Flights. So you had to go directly to Southwest. The genius of this, and then they just started raising prices. Oftentimes they're more expensive than anyone else. Yeah. But no one thinks to look at other airlines because they're like, well, I fly Southwest. It's the cheapest. I guess it's just going to be $1,500 to fly to Kansas City. Yeah. And they never even go look at everywhere else. So touche, Southwest. I know they're having problems now with the aging fleet, the unionized workers. That's always tough, but they'll get it figured out. Andrew, the 2025 cycling season starts when we meet, I think. January 20th. I can't quite figure this out. Tour Down Under starts Jan 21. Now, tell me, is that January 21 in Australia, which would be January 20th in North America, Europe, or is that January 21st in the United States, January 22nd in Australia?
Wow.
Unclear to me. I tried to track this down. Peacock, which is televising the race in the US, has it down as night of Jan 21, but that doesn't totally add up to me if the race is happening on the 21st in Australia. So stay tuned on when this race is actually happening.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, one thing that we know is Caleb Ewan is not going to be there. You may have heard of him, former Australian Criterium national champion in 2024, started the season with a bang, ended it with a whimper, nowhere in sight. Transfer news became not news, and we don't know where he is. Caleb, wherever you are, we wish you well. And I hope to see a Cavendish-like comeback in perhaps a Tour de France stage record in your future if you can extend your career a bit beyond what people might have expected.
I don't think he's going to be racing this year for Jay Coalula.
Right.
If I had to guess, I don't know totally what happened there. I heard that he tried to go to Astana and then Astana said no thanks. And then that left him in a lurch with Jayco. The big question I have is, did that attempt void his contract? Because he has a contract through 2025 where he gets paid a lot of money, 2 million euros a year. I know that there's Jayco's splitting that with his old team Lotto. I think it's like it's something like, I don't know. I think Lotto's paying a lot, like 1.3 million. Can you imagine that? Just 1.3 million for a ride that doesn't run on your team.
No.
And then Jayco's paying 700,000. Unclear to me if they're going to pay him through 2025 while he's not racing for them. That's like where I get a little confused. So I wonder if the contract was voided when he tried to leave and then now he doesn't have a team. But you'd have to imagine I also heard he was training 6 hours a week in December. So maybe he's not in great shape, but
Right.
it's still like, let's say Caleb Ewan doesn't care anymore. He's not going to win anymore. You think someone like Q36.5, you're like, well, what are your other options? Like take a flyer on him. Obviously, they don't want to pay him what he's making now. So maybe the price is the problem. But if it gets to March and he's not racing anywhere, you'd think he would probably take a pay cut to go just get in some races. I would be shocked if a smaller team doesn't pick him up, because even with all his problems, like last year, he generated 420 UCI points. That's not nothing for the amount he's getting paid. That's terrible. But if you could get him on a cheaper deal, near 500 UCI points is nothing to sneeze at for a lot of these smaller teams. I'm curious to see what happens there. Don't expect to see him racing for Jayco. And it's crazy how fast that fell apart. You remember last year, just 12 months ago, you were buzzing with excitement because the Tour Down Under was starting. Your man, Caleb Ewan, was taking the start line for Jayco. He went on to not win a single stage there. I think he was sick, so you cut him a little slack there. But that's kind of where it all fell apart. Didn't win a stage at Down Under. Didn't really perform the rest of the year. Then he was on the B team. Then, wait, got my years mixed up. Yeah, no, didn't win a stage at Down Under. Then he was on the B team, went to the Giro. Dylan Groenewegen went to the Tour, won a stage. Seems like that was kind of it. But wow, that fell apart. Also, Australian crit champs, Sam Welsford wins it. Did you watch this race?
No.
It's
on their famous,
expected.
Did they have it on their famous hot dog national championships?
No.
Okay.
Funny you say that. So for the first time in, I don't know, like 30 years, Australian champs moved. No longer in the old, they're doing like a dynamic, they move around the country now, and now they're in Perth. So it was in Perth.
Right.
Small field, it looked like really small field. It looked almost like a super prestige cross race where you had to be invited to race in it. It was shocking. Here, I'm looking up so there was something, there's a lot of like half the field DNF'd. Look, there's like 33 starters, which would be like a local crit. That would probably be smaller than a local crit in Boulder, but it was like super powered. It was like Sam Welsford, races for Red Bull Bora, not a Grand Tour stage winner, but he's won World Tour races before. Let me confirm that. Yes, he has won World Tour races before. Why? I guess it's just the timing, but why is Australia getting so many high-powered riders at their crit champs? And I guess we have Luke Lamperti, who's a World Tour rider, and he just shows up and easily wins. So maybe that's the analog to ours. Here's another question for you. Should American US champs be at this time of year, Andrew, so we can get better riders?
I don't know. I don't think that they're ready. Everybody's putting in those 40, 50-hour weeks getting ready for gravel season in the United States. I mean, this is the other thing with Caleb Ewan. As you mentioned, his volume has fallen so low. I believe that CBR season opener is this weekend. They have pint glass for all finishers in the top 15, which I think is pretty cool. So maybe Caleb could head out to Dominguez Hills. I'm sure he's got the fitness to carry himself through that. On the other hand, as Dylan Johnson has said, like 40 is the new 30, 30 is the new 20, 20 is the recovery week in gravel these days. And what does that say about the state of the world? What's happening? It's madness.
Well, you'd think sure, I guess. I mean, maybe for some people that works, but
it doesn't work for anybody. Over time, like the asymptote for this is Epstein-Barr syndrome, chronic fatigue, the end of your career, and health problems later in life. Look at Dave Scott and other triathletes from the 80s, unfortunately.
I mean, Pavel Bittner's putting in like 17-hour weeks, and the guy's winning Grand Tour stages, and is faster probably than almost any gravel cyclist. So
as we saw, Taco Vanderhorn is bikepacking around New Zealand right now, and he posted
sub 5 hour average per day.
Yeah, sub 5 hour average per day. I think he did 70 hours over 2 weeks. This guy, he'd be like 50th place in lifetime Grand Prix with that volume.
In all state, if you're listening to this and you're impressionable, don't listen to Andrew. Do what the really fast people do. Don't train 40 to 50 hours a week. This used to be a thing, actually. There was like this crop of Swedish cyclists, and they were amazing. Like, you remember like Thomas Lovquist? And they would train massive amounts, like 45 hours a week.
Right.
They all burned out. Like, Sweden's not recovered. Like, they don't have any good cyclists anymore. So yeah, maybe they should look at that in gravel. I mean, their races are long, but I don't know. It's not like marathoners aren't out there every day running marathons for their training. Like you can kind of split the effort up and do a bunch of repeated efforts at a high speed, and that's
Right.
how you train. You threw me off, but I was thinking, but on gravel, on Americans, it is kind of crazy. Like even if American Nats were this coming
Yeah.
weekend, like if we went to Tucson, let's say 15, 20 years ago, this time of year, we'd be seeing tons of pros. There'd even be like, I remember like Radio Shack had training camp there. But it's almost like all the Americans they're already in Europe. Everyone's in Spain training, like getting ready for the season, fresh doing some openers for the early season races. Like it's crazy how it's almost like 11 months of the year you have to be based in Europe now, and how much has migrated away from the traditional American hotspots.
Well, the hotspot used to be Solvang, as you'll remember.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, that's where Postal Service would train, had the windmills there in town. It was the Girona of the Mid-Coast.
It's probably like just close to Lance's like LA house.
Yeah,
He
probably.
didn't want to travel. If I had to gander, that's what happened there. It's also funny when you actually talk to the people in charge of these camps. It's like, well, you guys went to Albuquerque. Why'd you do that? Like, was there some methodology? It's like, no, we just got paid a bunch of money by the Albuquerque Tourism Board to go. So that's why we did it. The things you learn as you find out more. Next topic, Andrew, you just sent this over. Oh, also, if you actually want to watch these races, as I said, Tour Down Under's on Peacock. UAE Tour is the next big race. It is at the beginning of February. It is on Max, and then Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, I believe, is on Flow Bikes. I did a post yesterday on Beyond the Peloton newsletter where I tried to lay out what streaming service every major race in 2025 is on in the US. It's very hard to figure out. I think they intentionally obscure it. So you're like, Max has cycling. I'll sign up for Max so I can watch the Tour de France. And then you find out like a week before that it's actually on Peacock, not on Max. But I did some gumshoe work, talked to people, running these organizations that own these races. So I feel fairly confident in my sourcing, but I have that. I'll put a link to that post in the show notes. But yeah, Peacock, Tour Down Under, Max, UAE Tour, or my favorite thing, I don't even know if I should say this. This is legal. What I do is I sign up for Flow Bikes, which, don't be fooled, I don't think there's a monthly option. Our friend Jonathan Kaplan got worked over by the boys at Flow. He was unfamiliar with their elbow out business tactics. They tell you what it would cost per month, so you think you're signing up for a monthly option. It's an annual subscription. So just be prepared. But what you can do with Flow, you sign up, you put your VPN when they don't have a race they don't have the US rights. Just say you're browsing from Canada with the VPN, and you can watch almost every race on the calendar through Flow, and their commentary is pretty good. You could say some people have complaints about the Peacock commentary. I frankly, if you want my frank opinion, I have a hard time watching Peacock US commentary with the sound on. Something about it really bugs me. So I do the Flow commentary whenever possible, and that gets your costs down by like a third. But Andrew, you sent me a piece on Sepp Kuss right before we started recording. He had a preseason press conference at their training camp, the Visa Melissa Bike training camp. Actually, Daniel Benson, after you sent me that, I went back and read Daniel Benson's piece on it.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting, like, background. I guess all the leaders like sat out, but Sepp Kuss wasn't there, and people thought he just skipped the event. But he just like took himself out of the leader circle, even though he's the last rider on that team to have won a Grand Tour, which is super unusual. But Sepp Kuss says he's going back to super-domestique duty, no longer a team leader. What do you think about this?
I mean, I didn't get the sense that Sepp ever really wanted to be a team leader. He really enjoyed his super-domestique role. And it makes sense to me that we've landed back where we started. The thing that I think about in all of this, which we've talked about really ad infinitum, is Primoz lost his chance to potentially set the record for most Vuelta wins ever and got done dirty in that situation. And, GC Kuss, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I feel silly saying this. I was never a believer in GC Kuss because he just never performed well in a race where they had him lead. but then he obviously went on to win a Grand Tour. So the proof's in the pudding, I guess. It's hard to argue against it now, but it is strange. You rarely see a rider win a Grand Tour and then just say like, actually leadership's not for me. Sepp marches to the beat of his own drum, which is probably why he's been pretty successful. Has always just kind of operated in his own outside the edges of USA cycling. And I think that's allowed him kind of to take a lot of pressure off himself. So maybe this is just, he's just deduced, I'm not a leader. I'm not going to do this. I just want to go back to being a super-domestique, which oddly gives me a better chance of winning. My big question is, you look at this roster, and I maybe Primoz would have left anyway, but you say that was not a great situation. I think he was pretty mad about it.
Look at I think he was pretty mad. I think that's an accurate description.
So Jonas Vingegaard, obviously great rider. Who are their other GC options? I guess they signed Simon Yates in the offseason, which is a huge acquisition, probably the transfer of the year based on what that gives them. That gives them like a leader at the Giro and a bit an Adam Yates clone at the Tour. And Adam Yates has been key for Tadej Pogačar in recent years. They do have Matteo Jorgensen, who is emerging as a GC leader. So I guess that's why they could allow Sepp to kind of fade back into the background, because you have three somewhat viable GC options. But, since Primoz left, it's not been smooth sailing for them. Like the Giro last year, like they just had nobody in that conversation. And then the Vuelta, Sepp, I was going through when I was waiting for your computer issues, he might have the worst Grand Tour title defense in modern history from a rider that was not injured. Like Fabio Aru would be one where he won the Vuelta in 2015 and then never really got close to contending again. But he did get 13th in the Tour the next year. That's not terrible. Theo Gegenhardt won the Giro in 2020. Didn't really ever go back to contending, even though he looked pretty good at the 2023 Giro d'Italia. But he did have a teammate finish on the podium at the Tour de France next year. So maybe that's his GC, like what his GC juice would have been went to helping Richard Carapaz finish on the podium at the Tour. But yeah, pretty shockingly bad defense, actually, that I think he got off the hook on. It's funny to me that like no one was like, hey, Sepp Kuss, what's the deal with that? But I guess he's taking himself out of the conversation now. You don't see this very often. I would love to know what the contract situation is, because that's the reason, even if you felt like you want a leader, you wouldn't say it, because you want to get paid like a leader, because you get paid a lot of money.
Something that's fascinating to me and related to what's going on at Visma. Did you happen to read these quotes from Jan Tratnik about the resources over there at Red Bull?
I did not.
Okay. It makes sense. Red Bull has massive investments in high performance. They fund all these moonshot projects like the spaceman jumping out of the balloon.
That's insane, by the way. That's crazy.
Yeah, so that's what they do. They work with athletes. Athletes come up with an idea in conjunction with a marketing manager, and then they have really the best high performance staff, or one of the best in sport. And now the team has access to that. It sounds like last year Red Bull was a bit less involved. This year it's full on. And Jan Tratnik's comment was, compared to what he experienced at Visma, he's like, this is like the Top Gun program. This is exponentially better than anything I've ever seen on any team I've been on. It sounded like they had such advanced technologies that made me think about something else.
Red Bull would never do anything.
You know what? Maybe what he's talking about is schemo, because we all know that's kind of
the cleanest sport out there.
Well, it is the secret weapon that if you're not doing it, you need to kind of rethink what's going on in your cycling training career. That's actually what we're going to do down in Tucson. Yes, we're going to ride once we get to Windy Point or whatever, 2/3 of the way up Mount Lemmon. That's when we begin our schemo journey to the summit. Is the second leg of the duathlon. Yeah, it does sound, it makes sense. Like we've seen all of this talent, both on the rider side, but on the staff side. And this is something where I want to dig in much deeper. And it's also, I think, the area where teams are most secretive for obvious reasons, but what's going on in the high performance domain? Where do the next marginal gains come from? I'm talking about a few steps beyond the carbon monoxide rebreather. And I don't think we've talked about information that's come to light about Team UAE's AI model and how they're simulating races. And it sounds like, it almost sounds like Wogging in Game of Thrones. Like they have.
What's the model though? What's the simulation? It's like, so Tade attacks and crushes everybody and wins. All right.
But I'm saying it sounds, the way they describe it, and who knows, because no one has actually gotten to go and play around with the tech. So you never know if this is just a trial balloon to scare off other teams. I do think with the resources they have and what's going on with AI and computing in their sponsors' country and investments happening there, it makes sense that they would have access to resources that maybe other teams don't from a computing point of view. But they're creating full simulations of races, and then they input different variables and make adjustments from their machine learning model to see how it impacts the outcome. So they're simulating races, and it sounds like, I don't know if they're using Oculus or if Lucky Palmer has designed a drone for them or what, but they're kind of just like playing through a bunch of different scenarios and trying to think about, what do we do that's new and different? Because if we've learned anything in cycling 2.0, things that seemed impossible have become possible. Once those become possible, they become expected. I'm thinking about, for example, Pog's long-range attack at the World Championships this year. No one thought that made sense or would work. It worked. Therefore, we're likely to see someone else try that. As that becomes the norm, then it's like, okay, what happens, right? I mean, Jonathan Kaplan had the question of, would Pog ever just attack from the gun? As we've seen at, Super Week, for example, in the United States, we often see that in crits. We haven't seen that so much at the World Tour level, but it could happen. I mean, we've seen like drone hopper riders do that, maybe on a Giro stage. Typically doesn't work, but are we going to see Pog or someone of that magnitude do it?
Well, I thought about, so just before I forget, I did think about Kaplan's question. The biggest example I could think of was like, so Matt Heyman won Roubaix attacking from the gun. So that's, I guess, proof that it can work. The problem with a big favorite doing that is everyone would go with you. Do you remember the stage, Alberto Contador? It was an awesome stage. It was I believe the 2010 Tour de France, and it was short. It was like Alpe d'Huez. It finished on Alpe d'Huez.
Yeah.
It was a really short stage. Maybe that was 2011. Hold on a second. Yeah, stage 19, 109 kilometers. So that's like, 70 miles? Contador attacks from the gun. Cadel Evans is leading the race, and like, he's so caught off guard and like discombobulated, he gets off his bike because he thinks he has a flat. Do you know this feeling where you think you have a flat? You get off and check it and you don't have a flat? That's what he did in a race. Like, that's how caught off guard he was. And it caused a lot of problems. Contador didn't win the stage. Pierre Rolland did on Europe car. Evans did go on to win the overall, but that would be another one. But man, that was a short stage. I don't know if I would, it's really possible, but with these simulations, I mean, even a simple mathematical model that is, so Tade attacks here, he can go this fast with this bike and this wheel. He can consume this much energy. He's producing this power. He's going this speed. How can he actually go faster than the group behind? I feel like in cycling, people have only just started to ask that question. Simple question, if I attack here, can I go faster than the group chasing me?
Right.
And that's probably opened up a lot of opportunities for UAE. It is, yeah, that's kind of, I mean, even think about, now you have me thinking about this. A lot of the math in cycling is simple, and I feel like it wasn't examined, like the Bonnet, stage 19 of this year's tour,
right.
Big mountain, like tops out at 10,000 feet, 23K long. Who does UAE have pace on that climb? In old cycling, you'd say, let's put a climber on there, right? This is the toughest climb of the race, you could say. No, they put the biggest guy in the race, Niels Pollitt, on the front, and they absolutely explode the race. All these climbers are getting dropped because Niels Pollitt can put out so much power that the average gradient, which is 6.8%, isn't steep enough to penalize him for his extra weight. Someone ran the numbers on that and said, wait a second, like a big man who pedals hard is going to be better than little man who pedals soft on this climb. And it worked. And I don't feel like people thought that way even 4 or 5 years ago.
No, Definitely not. And I think that is what is interesting in some of the doors that technology might open. It's about prediction and pattern recognition and seeing opportunities that haven't occurred to people yet, or approaching things in a different way based on the edge that they have. So, there's what computers do, and then there are the legs that make it happen. So,
yes.
right. So, it's pro cycling is not PlayStation. It's also not Chat GPT or Middle Earth or whatever. Pick your favorite AI program. So I am curious to see how all of this pans out in real life when people have to go execute these actions. A rider of Pog's talent, I don't know. Maybe he can do that. I will say, I continue to believe that Jonas is my pick for the 2025 tour. I think it's wild to think that seems outlandish probably to most people.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's just if I'm wrong and Visma doesn't win the tour, what else are they going to pick up this season?
I mean, theoretically, they could win the Giro with Simon Yates. That's highly theoretical, though. I don't know if the Giro route, I'm going to have a post on this tomorrow. Yeah. Super hard, 20% more climbing than this year's race, which they clearly did. So it's like, hey, Pog, this is your training camp. It's not too hard. You can ride however hard you want every day. Right. It paid off. That was a great Giro. Good on them for being flexible. I guess Simon Yates can win. I mean, I'm a big believer. I'm heavily leveraged on Matteo Jorgensen's stock. This sophomore season, not technically a sophomore season, but like the second season after a big breakout season can sometimes be a little tricky. That would be the concern there. But, it's possible that he makes some noise at 1 week. I don't see him winning the tour. Maybe a podium finish at best case scenario. But then Vindigo, Jonas doing the Vuelta. I would say that's the insurance policy there. Now, if they don't win the tour, I'm just going to go beat my old teammate at the Vuelta España. Sorry, Primos. I'm going to watch you cry because now you don't have the record for the number of overall wins because we've screwed you twice.
Yeah, man, that would not be good. So anyhow, I think that's an interesting dynamic. And there's also this question of, we saw how fatigued Sepp appeared last year, even if we take away the weight of a title defense or whatever. That was never really in the cards. Even as a support rider, he just wasn't on the same level he was in 2023. So I think it's a very real question of, does he get beyond whatever was happening in 2024 to come back to the level they need him at to help Jonas win that title this summer?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I guess anyone can have a bad year, but it's not as common anymore.
A bad full year?
Yeah. You don't see it as much anymore. And he kind of he didn't really say anything in his interview recently. He just was like, cited struggles, the sensations.
I
guess there's complications of having, we saw this with Geraint Thomas. I mean, I can say this as a fat man myself, but when he showed up in the beginning of the 2019 season, he looked like a balloon. Like he was so big after winning the tour in 2018. I think there's just complications, right? To having such a big jump in success and you win this really big race, your off season probably is just so different. I think he also had a kid maybe, which can affect you. It doesn't affect everyone. It's actually all over the board how it affects people. I actually was maybe the fastest I've ever been when we had our first child, not me. We had our first child. So I don't know. It's unclear to me what happened. It is kind of weird. And even I'm thinking about Jan Tratnik's comments. He's also Slovenian, joining his Slovenian teammate, Primož Roglič at Red Bull. When you're on the ground, like Visma, very nice team. With the team with a nice setup, advanced team, they are still like a family business though. Like you remember when we talked to Richard Pluga, like he's out there looking for sponsors. Like Red Bull is a big company with a lot of resources. Not shocking to me, they have more resources. It's also funny, like Visma's big. I think the big game changer is they have a lot of vans. It sounds silly, but they just have the money. They invest. What did Pluga said? He said they save money by not signing bad, expensive contracts like Caleb Ewan, and they reinvest that money into training camps, infrastructure like vans and then the people to drive those vans, because you'd think like, oh, just get some people out there handing gels up. What's the problem? Well, when it's a point-to-point 150-mile race, it's actually a logistical nightmare. So if you can just afford to have 7, 8 vans with a bunch of people in them that can stand on the side of the road and hand people food, that's a huge advantage. I would imagine Red Bull is going to have that and more. So they're going to raise the bar even higher than Visma has. That might be it for me. I might be out. What do you have, Andrew?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I just continue to think about these scenarios where, I mean, we've seen it with Ineos. What happens to a super team if it can't do something with its talent development or tradecraft on the high performance side of things to keep advancing and innovating with the sport? It's wild to think that Visma might end up in this position. It's also possible. I mean, you keep up or you get lost. So I think that this is a watershed year. I'm not suggesting that Visma moves in the direction of Sky or Ineos, where they effectively become a farm system for putting people in the pontoons of America's Cup boats.
Oh, we had someone reach out about that, by the way.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about it. Yeah.
So apparently this might not be the theory behind Ineos, because New Zealand, they tried to get like good cyclists, and they found that it's a problem because they're often too light, that you need to do like 500 watts for 30 minutes on those things. So just the bigger you are, the better. So it's really like a track cyclist would probably be.
Going back, however, to counter your counter, going back to what we know of Ineos's talent development program and taking a look at riders like Geraint Thomas or Chris the Tank Froome, earlier in their careers, like when Chris Froome was at Barlow World, he had to weigh 30 pounds more than he did when he won the Tour de France. I mean, the guy was like a muscle and fitness cover model, basically.
Geraint Thomas used to be really big too.
Yeah, he's like look at Brad Wiggins' post cycling career. The guy is, I mean,
the guy's a unit.
Is he going to the CrossFit Games this year? Like, are we going to see him kicking in the NFL? What's next for him?
He's a really sweet guy, but if you didn't know that, you'd be like, I'm going to go to the other side of the street. This guy is going to kick my ass.
He's huge. Yeah.
He's massive. Like, what could he put out now? Let Wout gain 30 pounds. Let's look at that FTP. America's Cup. It's funny. I don't know why I'm thinking of this, but I think Ineos' problem, and Visma won't have this problem, is they just had too much money. They never got punished for bad contracts. So I think Visma has to be more cutthroat, because they can't just throw people money for the sake of throwing people money. I mean, Ineos had guys on the Classics team who hadn't had a result in like 6-7 years. And you look at a team like Intermarché, who has almost no money, and they actually would have a larger selection of riders that could potentially podium in a race than Ineos would, which something has gone wrong there if that's the case. But on this simulation question, so Kristen Faulkner, Olympic gold medalist, was on Geraint Thomas's podcast, and it was like I can't stop thinking about what she said. She was like, "Oh, USA Cycling didn't want me to do the road race because they thought it would hurt our ability to win the individual pursuit," which I don't understand. Their engines were so much superior than everyone else in the pursuit. It was not realistically going to punish them. Then they told her, she's, by the way, U.S. national champion in the road race when they're having this conversation. Right. So literally the best chance the U.S. has at a medal in the road race, because she's the best rider. And they say, well, we ran simulations and you only have an 11% chance of a medal. Two questions I have there. Well, 11% for a medal in a road race, that's actually pretty good. There's probably not many more riders in the race that have a better chance than that. But who's the mastermind at USA Cycling that's creating this model that is doing simulations of the race? Like, I need to know more about this model. Like, what is going on with USA Cycling? And they have an obsession there. If you talk to people at USA Cycling, obsession with, when we wake up in the morning, we make our coffee, we're doing it with the aim of maximizing the chance of American medals. And they get obsessed with it. They're obsessed with it. You'd think if you're obsessed with winning medals, it's like, hey, let's put our best rider who's going to win gold in the pursuit because we're so good into a race where they have an 11% chance of a medal. Like, it just really threw me off. I couldn't actually believe what I was hearing when she said that.
You know what's really wild now that we're talking about this out loud and we're talking about USA Cycling having a simulation. I'm wondering if that simulation was a decoder ring from a Cracker Jack.
that's yeah, about what I was thinking.
Yeah, and I
The eight
love
ball.
Yeah, Kristen Faulkner. What a rider! What two generational rides, and like moving right into direct angel investments in AI. By the way,
I know.
If anyone needs like a B2B SaaS QA tool, she's got one that she's promoting that she directly invested into. You can find it on Instagram. I will say though, so we're talking about UAE having all of these AI tools and machine learning and whatever. Of course, OpenAI, Gemini, all these technologies originate in the United States, or at least the biggest and best ones right now. You would think we might be able to harness some of those resources, get our riders in USA Cycling and Oculus. Like, couldn't they be doing this? I just don't know if I'm buying that USA Cycling had this like super complex,
I think someone is in that, and I don't even know who the decision makers on the roadside are there, but it's like, is it just TJ sitting there saying, by my calculation, you have an 11% chance of medaling? It's like, did you just make that up, TJ? Like, what are your sources on that? They also asked her a strange question. She's like, no, I think I can win, which is like, kudos to her for saying that.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, how? It's like, well, how does anyone win a race? Like, what are you talking about? She's a really good rider. She's probably the most powerful rider in the world.
Yeah.
Like, all things equal. What do you mean? Well, how are you going to win? It's like, well, I don't know. How does anyone win any race? Like, she's going to go faster than everyone else at the end and win, which is exactly what happened. I just thought,
right.
I might reach out to her and try to have her. I want to know more about this conversation. Like, what a weird, like, almost like, I don't want to say brain rot, but just, it feels like they can't. So what did they say? You can't see the forest for the trees. Like USA Cycling. Like, what a strange route stand to take. I don't get it.
I would like to learn more about that. I'm particularly interested in what the prediction engine is for.
Yeah, well, they fly us down to Colorado Springs, and I want to be walked through this prediction engine.
Well, I think it's actually located in Cheyenne Mountain. I think the Strategic Air Command's probably behind this. They might be using Fortran coding and punch cards. Spencer, I have some breaking news. I've just secured an extremely difficult to procure appointment at the Apple Genius Bar, and I'm gonna have to go soon.
Stay on the show. We want to hear what they say.
Yeah, this is very exciting. I think that we have a bit of information I'm going to have to get into a car. There is a Waymo down the block I saw earlier. I might go driverless to get over there. What do listeners need to know about what's going down in Tucson?
Oh man.
That we can share. Share.
So we have a wonderful host at Pace Ranch, which is beautiful rural-ish ranch at the base of Mount Lemmon. So perfect for riding. The slight complication is if we want to do a live show, we probably would have to commute into town. A lot of people have recommended like Presta Coffee at the Mercado, which looks fantastic. We probably will stop there at some point. I don't know if we really want to like be lugging everything down there, but it would be nice to have some sort of meet and greet.
Yeah.
Do you agree on that? I thought maybe, people could ride for us. We're probably going to do a flattish ride on Tuesday. It's like, maybe we could all just meet up at the Safeway at the base of Lemmon, but people might not feel confident that they can ride with us.
I'm not confident.
I'm not that confident.
We'll complete this thought. I want to let you know that social media is silly, right? However, it feels good when you get a Svein Tuft, I have to say. And I got one on my post about hitting my new dead hang pull-up PR yesterday, 21 pull-ups. Friend of Beyond the Peloton and Choose the Hard Way, Ben Davis, endurance sports legend, former Navy SEAL, executive director of the Veterans Outdoor Advocacy Group, quickly gave me some feedback. He didn't believe that I had achieved full lockout at the bottom of every rep.
I was watching that closely.
Yeah, he's like, sorry, man, not really. That's fine. Ben, you can come spot me on my next attempt. I was trying to get to the airport down in Boston, had a 4-hour drive. I've got all kinds of excuses, but Svein, thanks for stepping up and recognizing what happened.
Yeah, right. I maxed out on pull-ups. You could maybe dead hang. I didn't really have the pressure you had the other day. Do you want to guess how many I got?
12?
20.
Whoa, you did 20 pull-ups?
20 pull-ups. But I'm also doing them on like, I have a climbing wall above a door. So I have to like, I don't know if it makes it harder or easier. Like the grip is really hard. Like you're gripping.
You're just like holding on with your fingertips?
Yeah, holding on with my fingertips. But I don't know if that actually makes it easier or harder though. So maybe we'll do a head-to-head in Tucson.
Yeah. And Spencer, if you could reshare those photos from Tulsa Tough, people can get a look at your build. I mean, I don't know. I think your calling might have been CBR series champion. If anybody who's raced in SoCal knows that, like, the profile of the classic SoCal crit rider is basically bodybuilder.
Yeah, with a lot of tats.
Yeah, and I think you could have been a leader.
I don't know if I like do enough meth though. That's my issue.
That's your personal choice. All right, I got to hop in the Waymo here, but we will be in Tucson. We'd love to see you all. I am revving up the Choose the Hard Way engine again. I've got a newsletter ready to go. I'm getting into some more existential matters. We're going to keep talking about pro cycling. I've got Chase Work coming on the pod soon to talk about his 1,000-mile week on the trainer recently.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Chase is a really interesting person. And I think his approach to marketing is probably one of the best that I've seen in professional cycling. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. But if you followed Chase's career, you know, he's made a lot of innovative equipment choices and has done some pretty wild stuff at these gravel races and is really maximizing his talents. So I'm looking forward to that. We'd love to see you all in Tucson. I'm trying to consume as much Mexican food as possible while I'm outside of Mid-Coast Maine. And if you're afraid that someone might be too fast, there's always somebody faster than you. In fact, I think there might be at least 2 or 3 other people on this trip faster than me. So I'm going to just be out there working to keep up and drag my butt up the hills.
And if you do want to ride with us, we'll probably do a flattish loop on Tuesday and then lemon on Wednesday. I don't think to the top. It doesn't look that warm. So we'll turn around at some point.
Staying warm is key. You can watch my social media. That's at Hardway Pod on Instagram. Instagram stories is where I do most of my nonverbal communication. And Spencer, if people want to get information from you, watch the newsletter. We'll do a red alert bulletin. How will we let people know?
We probably will do a red alert bulletin on the newsletter, but Instagram as well, at Spencer, Spencer Sword, SOWARD on Instagram. We'll keep people updated, and don't be afraid to ride with us, especially on the flat day. I mean, we're not going to be. Maybe we got Kip Taylor with us though. Oh my Lord! So who knows? Maybe we will all get dropped together.
Yeah, I've got my Tour de France debut. I mean, we're 5-6 months out, so I'm not peaking right now. Don't worry about it.
Just ticking it over this time of year. All right. Well, thanks, Andrew.
Right.
And best of luck in the Waymo.
Oh, thanks so much.